One of the absolute worst things you can do is to accuse someone of being a pedophile without any kind of substantive evidence. Because more so than pretty much any other accusation, it's something that will never wash off. Even if it's complete nonsense, even if there's no evidence whatsoever, even if you're found innocent in a court of law and they determine that there's absolutely no wrongdoing, it's probably going to stick with you for the rest of your natural life. People are still going to think you're a pedophile. You're still going to be penalized by businesses. I knew someone whose ex wife falsely accused them of it. And even though they were found innocent and the court said it was complete nonsense, children's aid protective services still took his daughters away. And he had to fight like a 5 year long legal battle costing hundreds of thousands of dollars just to see his kids again. The only things I can think of that are somewhat comparable is if you are accused of being a racist or a rapist. I think it's easier though to get past the accusation of being a rapist even. And not everybody will care as much about you being a race having maybe said something racist in the past. Both of those things are pretty bad, but pretty much everybody hates pedophiles. And for good reason. Over time, I've tried to think about it. What is the worst possible moral thing that someone could do? Because there's a lot of bad stuff in the world. There's embezzling money, there's killing random people, there's torturing animals. And the conclusion that I've always come to is the worst thing you can do morally is abuse children. And by abuse, I mean like torture, molest, is to do stuff with children. And you can make it more dramatic, you can make it more over the top and add in like cannibalism or something. But ultimately, the worst thing you can do is to hurt children. And so, in accusing someone of being a pedophile, you're accusing them of basically doing the worst thing they possibly can, and something that most people will recognize as being the worst thing that they possibly can do. And I find that over time, it's becoming increasingly normal and increasingly acceptable to make these accusations with basically no evidence and to completely ruin the person's life. And to try to dismiss it as, oh, it's just a meme, bro, or it's, oh, this is just internet drama or something. I can say whatever I want. But to me, stuff like that, it's similar to expressions like don't hate the player, hate the game, or life isn't fair, where it's just a really thin, pathetic attempt to avoid moral responsibility for something that you actively are doing. The logic, I guess, is if you dox someone and then make up fake claims that they're a pedophile and it ruins their life, that's somehow okay because it's on the internet. And granted, the internet is a place where there are no rules and you have to expect people to do stuff like that. But that really doesn't free them from any sort of moral accountability in an absolute sense for pulling something like that, for slandering someone and trying to ruin their life. And traditionally, depending on the community, there were some unwritten rules. There were some things where people would still do them, but if you did them and you got caught, everyone would either exile you or you would lose a lot of face. That was stuff like false flagging, doxing, swatting, stuff like that. And especially recently, a lot of that stuff has just become normalized. It's not even something people try to hide anymore or they feel ashamed about. And as bad as a lot of that stuff is, I don't think any of it really comes close to accusations of someone being a pedophile. I maintain pretty consistently that I think that is a reason that websites should be able to ban people if they're trying to accuse someone of being a pedophile with no evidence. Because it's literally the most damaging single thing you can probably do to the person. The person could probably recover from you breaking all of their limbs sooner than they could recover from being accused of being a pedophile. Now, I've never really been able to try to explain this, but something I really hate is when somebody takes a word or a term and uses it in a non-standard way, but keeps all the initial weight behind. So something I know new atheists would do is say the universe came from nothing. And the colloquial understanding of nothing is that it means that, nothing, a complete absence of anything. But when they say nothing, they refer to energy and quantum foam or cosmic dust or something. So it's not nothing as the word is traditionally understood. Mass shootings are another example where you take an extremely broad term, but in reality, it only applies in a very narrow context. But people still associate the narrow context with the wider term. And I find pedophilia is definitely an example of that, where the attempt is to take any form of sexual behavior involving two people of different ages and redefining it as pedophilia while still using the image of it being some like so like when you say pedophile, I think what most people think is someone in their 20s or 30s or something who's molesting a prepubescent kid, who's molesting like a 6 or an 8 or a 12-year-old. And I think that's the image that immediately goes to mind. But what people will do is they will take the term which conjures that truly horrendous image, and they, like I said, they'll apply it to any case where there's an age difference. I know in the case of DSP, for instance, and this is something I defended him on for the entirety of the time I've talked about him, is he was, I think, 30 or something, and he had a 17-year-old or 18-year-old girlfriend, and people called him a pedophile. And they were taking the perspective that it's somehow him dating a woman who's a legal adult. I think she was a legal adult. I think she was 18 when they started dating. That him dating a legal adult who's younger than him is the same thing as someone molesting a small child. And I've seen this like in a lot of cases. Like there was a case the other day, I'm sure people know what I'm referring to, where it's like, oh, someone was 21 and he was dating a 17-year-old and that makes him a pedophile. And they'll use the term in like a completely incorrect way. They'll also just use it like in the case, and this was something that happened the other day too. Like there's a guy who was involved in incest, and they called that pedophilia. Um, I've seen it if like two kids who are the same age engage in sexual activities, that's pedophilia. But basically, it's just taking it, and then if anybody tries to call it out and go, "That's not what pedophilia means," it's like, "Oh, you're defending pedophiles. You're calling me out for using this word in a bullshit term to try to slander someone. Why are you so concerned with using this definition?" And it's just a very transparent attempt at gaslighting. And it's just very fake and very gay. And it's something that I just really hate in general, is when people try to pull stuff like that. I mean, it really has nothing to do with you defending pedophiles. You just don't like when people use terms in the wrong context. You don't like it when people attempt to redefine things. And if we want to look at this from a moral standpoint, because maybe you're going to say, look, I don't care about the truth, Argent. I don't care about trying to be accurate in the way I speak. I don't think that that has any value in a postmodern world. Which makes you wonder why the person in question is accusing someone of being a pedophile and getting morally indignant about it if they're going to take the perspective that it's okay if I just completely fabricate this. But I digress. I mean, more than that, it cheapens and dilutes the actual horror of what real pedophiles are doing. I mean, are we really supposed to believe, according to these people, that the definition covers both like a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old, I guess in certain states having sex, and like a 40-year-old molesting a small child? Like that is the expectation that we're supposed to take. And me even questioning it and saying like that's like you shouldn't be saying that is people say, "Oh, Archie, you're defending pedophiles." I mean, once again, my perspective has been pretty consistent. I think if you're found guilty of raping a child, you should be burned alive. Because I just think it's something that doesn't occur to a normal person. Like, until I heard about the concept, it just never would have occurred to me, even, to think of a child in a sexual way. And the idea completely repulses me, but like, I don't think like seeing children as sexual objects is even something that occurs to most people naturally. I think it comes from such like an antisocial, profoundly fucked up view of the world and other people that they're just people you have to physically remove from society. And to accuse someone of that with no evidence. So like maybe let's get into it. So what would I consider to be evidence? If the person is caught with child pornography, I do think if someone frequently makes statements defending cuties, defending child porn as a form of freedom of expression, defending lolly, defending people who look at it, then that's like enough to go on to say that that person is deeply suspect. And there's probably something to it. Like, let's take another recent example of someone who's accused of being a pedophile. So we have Ethan Ralph, who was dating Faith when I think she was 17 or something, and people call him a pedophile over that. And I mean, is it sleazy and disgusting to find some like BPD girl who's just fresh out of high school and to kind of give her a bunch of drugs and take advantage of the fact that she's like retarded and naive? Yeah, it is fucked up, but it doesn't make him like a pedophile. But then when he did the whole thing like about where he was salivating over the age of consent in Portugal and trying to figure out how to get around sex tourism laws, to me that's like a lot more evidence. That's like, if not definitive, that's enough that I think you can openly question some. Like if someone's saying, "Oh, Cuties is a good movie, it's a piece of art or something," like I do think that that is like enough to at least say the person's suspect. But if you have nothing and all you're doing is just, oh, you were friends with, you had a Steam contact who posted something on some other website at some point, like that's nothing. Um, from the recent event, I'm not trying to passive aggressively ignore the event. I just, if someone sees this video later, I don't want to date it as much as it already will be. You have to be careful with it. I think even if someone is like a scumbag in a lot of ways, you shouldn't add on them being like a child molester or being a pedophile as being an additional thing to slander them with, because it is something that's just so horrendous. And it's more than anything else is just something that's accepted with absolutely no evidence. That is just something you shouldn't be doing. So that's my opinion on the matter. I'm sure everyone knows what I'm referring to, but I try to be fair about these things. And if some people I think are being sleazy and they're lying and they're being dishonest and they're trying to engage in life ruination, then I feel the need to call it out because ultimately I do care about the truth. I it is to me like the single highest value. And do I fail to live up to that? Yes, I do fail to live up to that. I'm sure I've called people pedophiles when they don't deserve it in the past, but that doesn't change the perspective that it. And I say if because I don't know. I've done like 2,000 videos, so maybe I said something like that at one point. But and I can't remember everything I've ever put up. But truth is important to me, and I don't think people should ever be shit on for trying to like ensure accuracy, be it about the definition of pedophile or whether or not there's any actual evidence that somebody ever had even had sexual thoughts about a child, let alone acted on. So that's my thoughts on the matter. Um, God bless, I suppose, and more videos to come.